Give a warm welcome to Richard Casper from Crazy Back.
Thank you. And I think this thing, can you hear me? Can you hear me? Yeah, sweet. I can't hear. Oh, there I am. Well, thank you all so much for having me. When Rick told me about this, I was like, okay, this is cool. Because typically, I'm telling my nonprofit story, which is my story, but I lean heavier on the nonprofit and what we do. But this one was really more faith-based, like my journey here and knowing the people that come in and out of the door, like a lot of my family history. But I'm going to start with like a little clip, which I'm going to hope is going to work through this. This will kick it off.
A plane has just crashed into the World Trade Center here.
I want to be the first person fighting in this war. He doesn't know that. He doesn't. Yeah.
Why me? Why did I get to continue on in life?
He's changed a lot. You can tell something's missing.
After his tour campaign, Richard Casper volunteered to go to Iraq.
I needed a voice. Then I needed a purpose for that voice.
He suffered 4 IED injuries and came back with traumatic brain injury. Richard, how are you, big guy?
I'm doing great. Thanks, George. That's honestly the only reason I do that. It's kind of what George Bush to introduce me every time I speak. It's pretty awesome. So that was a documentary shot in 2017 based off my life and creative events. And so I do have a brain injury. My Humvee was blown up 4 separate times in Iraq. So what I do is, when I had this first opportunity to ever speak is when I've never told my story more than like 5-10 minutes, and I still had extreme anxiety, and I was like, there's no way I could tell my story, but then I realized there's always a way. So I decided, you know what, if I just put a bunch of photos linear of I'll just remember the story when I click and see the next thing. And so that's what I do. And still to this day, sometimes if I adjust it, I don't know what slide's coming next. So we're all in this roller coaster together. So this is me in high school, still, life of the party, that sexy man right there in that Adidas shirt. So that was kind of my personality, class clown, prom king, which didn't take much because there's 22 kids in my class. I'm from Illinois, town of 1,100 people. But my siblings, I had 3 older siblings. All of them have been to prison and jail, including my sister. We grew up on food stamps. My dad was a truck driver and alcoholic, not a good mixture. My mom was like my rock, but she still worked in a factory like $12 an hour. So we knew at this time, I was like, you know what, I'm probably going to go military to get out of this town. But also I had this deep urge to just serve my country. My dad was one of 11. He was in the Navy. All of his brothers served in the Army, Air Force, or Navy. And so this time, I still didn't know what I wanted to do, but I knew I was going military. But the same year is 2001.
We all know what happened. So when 9/11 hit, that's when I instantly said, okay,
I'm going to go to the Marine Corps. And so my superpower would probably be optimism, because no matter where I'm at and what situation I'm at, I'm like, I could do that. So this idea was, when it first happened, when we were first attacked, I just thought it was Saddam Hussein because we were hearing all these stories about him mustard gassing people, and I was writing papers on him. So instantly, I was just like, oh, I want to be the first person overseas. I want to be the one who captures him. I understood that I probably wouldn't be, but I also believe in a lot of false, I'm just going to say it and hopefully it'll come true. But I'm also realistic in being like, it's probably not going to be. But what is the easiest way to set that up? Marine Corps, infantry, 2003, I'm going straight over. So I had to finish out 1 more year of high school, which, by the way, so this is the height of the war, and I go to my mom and I say, hey, I'm going to join the Marine Corps. She says, no, you're not. And here's a tactic. So when I went there, she said, no, I'm not going to sign it. You're 17. I said, well, if you sign it now, I get a whole year of training with the Marines. If you don't sign it now, I'm going in raw. I'm just going to go in with no training. She thought it was smarter to get me some training beforehand in the DEP program, so she signed it. So within 2 weeks after high school, I was shipped off to boot camp in California. I don't think that's my next photo. Boom, nope, tricked you. So I ended up guarding the President of the United States. It's a job I did not know existed. So here I am. Think about this mindset. It's November 2003. I'm going into June. See, this is where the brain injury comes in. June of 2003, I go into boot camp thinking I'm infantry. All the buddies I'm serving with are infantry. This is they're getting ready for the first push into Fallujah. So that's where my headspace is at this whole time. Like going to war, going to war. So all of a sudden within 2 weeks, I get pulled at least. And if you've been in the Marine Corps, you know you don't want to be on a list. And so I was kind of like laying low throughout boot camp the whole time. And they come in with this whole list of people and they're like, Casper. And I'm like, dang it, I'm one of the people on the list. What's happened? They said special testers. It's like, what's a special tester? Then I remembered in high school, because I knew I was going to the Marine Corps, you shouldn't do this going into high school. All the state standardized tests, I went C, straight down the middle. I was like, I'm going military for life. So I'm just gonna like screw college, screw whatever. I'm gonna be the fastest one done on these tests. So my thought when they said special tester was like I was a special Marine. Like he tested so low, we're gonna give him a helmet, some crayons and ship him off over here. One thing I didn't know was though, for the ASVAB, I actually tried because obviously I wanted to be in the military. So I got a really high score in the ASVAB. And so later that's when they revealed it to us after, it was months. So in Marine Corps, we had 3-month boot camp. And so within 2 months, I've already seen like 4 different people throughout this process. We started with probably 100 to 300 Marines. I really don't know because we're all in different platoons. And then when we ended, it was 20 of us. And that's when they had us actually interview for the position. And we didn't even know what the position was. So at the end of it, there was like 14 to 20 of us. And they said, hey, you guys have been selected to guard the President of the United States. So I'm in this weird place. I'm faith-based though. So I'm like, you know what? If God's going to bring me this way, but I feel like he was supposed to send me to war. Like I was going through this whole process in my head. So then I go to the School of Infantry and I start training there. And in there, we do alphabetical order. So I had Cartwright here, Cherry over here, Horn over here, Longoria down there. Cherry was the youngest guy in the Marine Corps at the time. Like I remember because when November did hit, it was the Marine Corps ball and they pulled him as the youngest Marine in the Marine Corps with the Commandant. And I was like, oh, this is cool. Well, then SOI ended, like the School of Infantry ended. I had to go to Chesapeake, Virginia for security force school to train now for my new job of guarding the President. And he went off to a unit. And then so did Longoria, so did Horn, so did Cartwright. Well, one after one, I was getting noticed that, hey, Cartwright died. Hey, Cherry died. Hey, Longoria died. Hey, Horn died. Because I was going to be the first people pushing the Fallujah, and the boots is what they call us because we're new, fresh suede. And so I would have been one of those. So in that moment, I was like, well, God probably saved me on this one, but I still, I had survivor guilt before I even knew what survivor guilt was. So I kept training, went to the School of Infantry, Security Force School, Chesapeake, Virginia, Washington, D.C. for 11 months. And honestly, I didn't think I was going to make it through there. There was guys in the Marine Corps that had been there forever, and I was saying, you know, when they look at my family, growing up on food stamps, all my family in prison, there's no way they're going to allow me to have a TSC clearance 2 or Yankee White Category 2 clearance. It's like, there's no way they're going to do this. And somehow, some way, it came through after 11 months, and I ended up at Camp David serving George W. Bush. But when I was up there, I just still, as I'm hearing these things about my buddies dying, I'm like, this isn't where I'm supposed to be. And at this point, I know I'm not career Marine Corps too. So I was like, I have a limited time. So 14 months is usually when you roll out of Camp David. And so I'm getting ready to roll out. And my first sergeant says, hey, Richard, we're actually short on people. We'd love you to stay up here. And I said, with all due respect, I can't get out of the Marine Corps knowing I never served the way I needed to serve. So I need to go. And so they sent me to 29 Palms, California, which I don't advise you go on any vacations there. It's where the Army had it as a base, and they said it's unfit for living. And then the Marines are like, we'll buy it, and we bought it. And then now that's where the Marines are now in 29 Palms, California. So I went to 29 Palms, and so I started doing this workup to go to Iraq. Now it's like, okay, we're going to Iraq, sweet. So I'm doing this whole workup. 2 months goes in. They come to me and say, hey, Richard, you actually can't go on deployment with us. You meet our deployment, or you miss our deployment because you get out July 2007. And we don't even leave till January. So it's just not a time frame we could fit you in. I'm like, well, that's why I'm here. Is there another unit about to deploy? And they said, yeah, 1st Tank Battalion has this tow unit. They had this big boot drop, bunch of young Marines. They don't have any senior leadership. We'll send you over there. I was like, sweet, sign me up. So I go over there with about 18 other 2-7 Marines. So now we're starting to do a workup with them too. All of a sudden they hit me with hey, you missed our deployment by 1 month. You can't go to Iraq with us. So I'm like, what's a guy got to do to get to Iraq around here? There's all these people who are trying to get out of it, and I felt like that was my destiny. I felt like I'm supposed to go over there, whether it's the warrior's death, I'm supposed to die over there. I was so comfortable with my faith that I legitimately didn't have fear about dying because I was like, maybe this is my route. I'm going to go here. So I start trying to be like, well, what can I do without it going 4 years? in the Marine Corps, right? I was like, no, I thought it was a 4-year contract or bust. Like, I didn't want to, okay, I'll just do a month, but I also would have done a month with 2-7 if I would have known, but okay, this is where I'm supposed to be. So I go off to war. But again, same personality.
I don't know why, but, well, I kind of know why, because I was a goofball. On my packing list, I had like one of those
Fake sleeve tattoo sleeves. I had a mullet wig I packed with me. I had like Santa hat. Again, I was like my one-man USO. I guess I thought I was going to entertain the troops because I've always been that kind of spirit. I just want to make everyone in the room happy. And so I go to war, but within the first 4 months of me being there is when I was blown up 4 separate times. First time
in November 17th-ish, I tore Vernie Doctors and I castropharyngitis or something. I tore cartilage in my chest because
the overpressure of the bomb went down my throat and expanded my lungs so much it tore cartilage. So then in December 14th, my gunner and one of my good friends there was shot and killed right beside me. So I'm the lead vehicle commander in this truck. He's right beside me. He gets shot and killed. Then January 2nd, I get blown up again. January 17th, I get blown up again. And then February 14th, I think was February 13th, I think was the last time I got blown up. They said I couldn't work anymore. So I'm sitting here like, what the crap? Like, I can't work anymore, but I'm staying on base. This is ridiculous. Like, I need to get out of here. But I also didn't think I was damaged. That sounds weird to think because, I was blown up a bunch of times. But in my head, war is one of the easiest things you have to do because your only thought process is don't die. Yeah, it's extremely dangerous and you're going over there to do a job, but you legitimately aren't like, I need to pay bills. I need to go to the grocery store. I need to do this. Your one sole thought is don't die. And so it's very simple on your brain. So since I was unfit for duty and I couldn't leave the base anymore, but they kept me in Iraq, I could tell I had some sort of brain issue because I couldn't remember anything anymore. But I thought, I'm having migraines for a whole month straight. But you know what? On that 31st day, I didn't have one, even though it came back on the 32nd day. So I'm getting better. This is my mindset. I'm getting better. So it's just going to go away. Also in 2007, most of the military didn't really know anything about TBIs, or at least they weren't talking about it. And so because I extended 1 month in the Marine Corps, I did my separation and TAPS, which anybody in the military will laugh at this, before I went to war. Typically, you get out and you come back home, you transition, you get into this TAPS program to learn how to get out and acclimate into the military. They did mine before war because they're trying to shove me into that little thing. So 3 days when I got back from war, I just checked on the Marine Corps saying I'm good. They're like, do you need to see medical? It's like, you guys are the smart ones. If you don't think so, I don't need it. And so I just got out of the Marine Corps. And so instantly transitioning home, I had a good first few months, but then all the things happened. Depression, memory loss, isolation, loss of issues. I went from that awesome dude that could be on stage and talk to anybody, which I call, if 0 was killing myself and 100 was me before war, I was at a 9. And it was legitimately only faith in God that kept me at that 9 sturdy. But I didn't know what I was doing because I was just like, what is wrong with me? I'm a piece of crap. I wasn't like this. I guarded the president. I went to war. And now I enrolled into a community college because we didn't have a lot of money. And I was failing all my classes. I had to do one-on-one speeches with my speech teacher in class. These 18, 19-year-old kids are getting up here, reading these reports, talking. I'm sitting back here as like a war-hardened veteran who went through so much at 22 and guarded the president. And I'm like, I can't even physically stand up there and talk to these kids. What's wrong with me? And so I kind of start going to this deep depression, but I also start thinking, there's got to be another way. But I put this is something I've never talked about on stage, typically because I'm telling my nonprofit journey, not my faith journey. But the one thing that really made me understand that I was put on this earth for a very specific reason, it wasn't even being blown up so many times before. When I was like 16, I drove this 4-wheeler through barbed wire fence. I still have, obviously I have this tattoo, but there's like a huge scar that goes here. There's scars that are right here. But when I drove through this thing, like nothing touched my head. It was an absolute miracle. Like this thing locked up and I went through this 3 rows of barbed wire. And again, I was completely fine. Then a year later, I was T-boned by this lady going 65. And I was like in a little Ford Ranger. And I'm a big guy anyway. So I was like set up there. So I had like scar here and some staples in my head. And then I went to war and then blown up 4 times, watched my buddy die. And the sniper was on the same side that I got out and peed. So like when we were sitting on this possible IED, I opened up my truck door and I walked around and I started peeing on the tire. And I was like, oh, I should be a hard target. Just thought about it. And so I start moving. That's legitimate. And then I have it on camera. I get back in. I have the old JVC, like 20 gigabyte. I'm like, oh, I'm just going to get back in the car in case there's a sniper. And then I shut the door. And previous to that, my gunner, Luke Yepson, I had this tattoo I designed. And so before it was all this, it didn't have this here. It didn't have a name here. It was just a cross and a sash and angel wings. And it just hit me one day that I need to tattoo this on my body. I had no idea why. And as I'm walking through the catwalk one day, Luke, who is a boot to me, so like it's kind of like you're not supposed to get along, but he was a little bit older than everyone else, so we used to give each other crap. And so he's like, why is that sash open like that? I was like, well, in case someone, I love dies or something, maybe I'll honor them. He was like, would you put me on your arm? I was like, no, you're a boot. I'm never putting you on my arm. And then fast forward, we go to Iraq, and we're sitting in this gun, same situation. I get done peeing. I say, just in case snipers, shut the door. And then I say, hey, Luke, get down. And then where he's at in the gun is like, I see his feet like scoot down a little bit. And then, because I'm right here, like looking out the driver's window, and his feet are here. Then I see his feet go back up, which means he's going back up. And I was like, Luke, you want to end up on my arm, don't you? And he's like, it'd be an honor to be on your arm, Corporal Casper. And 10 minutes later, he was shot and killed. And so that was one of those things where obviously affected me, and I almost died again. And then I get back home, and it's 2 weeks. When I was in Iraq, I had this Harley. My first vehicle was a Harley. My dad couldn't afford it, so I took over his payments, and then I bought my own. And then I was like, you know what? It's a 2006 Road King. It had like a window, but not a front fairing with speakers. I was like, you know what? I'm going to send money back home to put a front fairing with speakers on it. So when I come home, I can just ride around and listen to whatever I want. And so my buddy's dad did that for me. I sent like $2,000 home. They put some Kenwood speakers, this really cool detachable front fairing on it. So I get home. I'm in Maryland. It's probably like 1 a.m. For some reason, me and my buddy thought it'd be a good idea. We're just going to drive through the night back home from Pennsylvania to Illinois, straight down the interstate, like 90 and all that. And so we got on. He's in his R8. Is that what it's called? I forget. It's like one of those little bitty cars. And I'm on my Harley cruising through the mountains. I still remember I was listening to Billy Currington's song where it's like, we rode bikes with no helmets and still here we are. I remember that because I was wearing a fake helmet on my Harley just cruising through, and a deer came up, and I just smoked this deer going like 50 miles an hour. And so I hit the deer, and I roll, and I tuck and roll off to the side, and I'm just sitting there, and all I know is that typically most people don't know they're injured when they're in an accident. So I just was like, I waited. My buddy runs up behind me, just dropping the F-bomb, like F, just all the way up to me. And he's like, are you good? Are you good? And I was like, Mike, get my real helmet out of my saddlebags. And so he took off my fake helmet, went and got my DOT-approved helmet and put it on my head, and then went and kicked the deer for me. I didn't ask him to do that, but he told me later he kicked the deer for me. And he came back. And when the ambulance showed up and they picked me up and they put me in, they're like, we heard accident up here in the mountains. 2 days ago, Harley hit a deer.
They died, and we just assumed they're dead. There was nothing wrong with me besides
some busted bruise, no broken bones, no nothing. And I hit this thing on 50, and it was the front fairing that saved my life, and it was also the fake helmet that saved my life.
They said I spun so many times that a regular weight helmet would have just like
torqued my head so far back and forth. So all these things happened, and I had a realization right there in the ambulance, almost like a flashback of all these things, saying like, how am I going to die here when I just got back from war? That was supposed to be my death. But then I was like, wait, I'm not dying here. Why am I here? God has put me on a path, and I'm going to do pretty much whatever that looks like now, no matter how hard or what it is. And so that's what led me into art. So Luke Yepson is the one who died. I go to his grave every year in Houston, visit his family. I didn't know his family before this, but I had this urge in my heart to travel down and meet his family. Even though I was in charge of him, I thought they'd blame me for his death. There's just nothing that was going to stop me from going down there. So I'm going to community college now. I'm starting to fail my classes. Well, what's a guy to do? So again, optimism kicks in. I say, you know what? I guard the president. I went to war. I could do this. I just need to do something that's easy. I failed business. I failed all these other classes because of my brain injury. What can I do that's easy? I'll do art. Why not? It's what 18, 19-year-old kids who just don't, they have weird life stories, but they don't want to talk to me. They're anxious for their own reasons. Now I'm anxious for this reason. I'm just going to do art and try to get away with it. So I'm in this basic art class, drawing class in Bloomington, Illinois at a community college. When I start thinking, you know what, I need to do something for me. I'm going to draw something for me. So I take this photo of me at my gunner's grave, and we're doing a chalk pastel. And so I start doing chalk pastel. And I'm one of those guys who I do not like art. I never liked art. I never played guitar. I tried twice to learn for chicks. Never worked, so I just gave it up. Art, same thing. I like to doodle all the time, but I never wanted to do art, never appreciated it. Thought it was for a very specific type of person, not me. And so I legitimately only did it for a cop-out degree. I was like, if I do this, I can go to the FBI or CIA because I have such an awesome background. So I just need to get back and do like a high-speed, low-drag situation that like will probably save my life. It'll be cool. I'll do this. So let's just get art out of the way. But art completely changed my life, and this is the one image that completely changed my life. So I'm sitting here after learning all this random crap with drawing. I'm doing this chalk pastel. And so I'm coloring in everything the way it's supposed to be. My cami shorts, the black shirt, my tattoo, the roses, the headstone, except for I put John 15:13 on the headstone. And I'm about to do the back end of this when my teacher comes up and he's like, hey, Richard, I see that you're probably going to do the grass green because that's the way the grass is in this photo. But I want to encourage you to do a color that grass would never be. A color that doesn't make sense. A color that can evoke an emotion. And I'm like, well, that sounds really dumb. This is my first time doing chalk pastel, and I'm really liking what I'm doing, and I don't want to mess this up. I was like, why would I do that? He said, well, in the art world, you have to do things like critiques, where you put a piece of art up on a wall, and people try to decipher that. And if you're not in the room, you need to give them little clues of what's happening. So I was like, okay. And as a good Marine, I just, you know what, screw it, I'll just do whatever. And so I just did everything red. And again, I did a pretty good job, right? Outside the red, I was like, okay, this is stupid. I just ruined this whole thing. But I had it red, and they said, okay, we're going to do a critique. And I was so art dumb at the time, I didn't even know what really critiques were until he explained that last thing. And so I put it up, and he says, Richard, do you want to talk about your piece? And there's a bunch of kids in the class. I'm like, no, that's why I'm here. I ain't talking about this piece. And they said, students, what do you think with Richard's piece? Like, what do you think he's trying to say? Now, these kids I never talked to about my war experience. One by one, they said, hey, I think you put red in there because you're angry your friend died. One said, I think you put red in there because you loved your friend. And another one said, I think you put red in there because you saw his blood and you were with him when he died. And I'm like, what? I didn't say that. But that's what happened. How did one color just tell my whole story? I said everything without saying anything. What is this? Why did I feel so connected to that person as if I fought in a war with them that now I feel like I'm open to sharing anything with them? It blew my mind. I was like, what is this voodoo witchcraft that just happened? So my teacher started telling me about symbolism and modern art and what they're really trying to do and how they express their stories. And I just went all in. I said, you know what? Screw this. Like, I want that feeling again. I want the feeling of being related to have a civilian understand what I went through, when that's what all veterans talk about. Well, they'll never understand. They understood in that second. They may not emotionally understood, but they understood what I went through. So I felt so connected that, again, I go all in. So I started studying more art, going to creative writing classes, my friends started teaching me some guitar. I started trying to write a song about Luke at the same time I was at this community college. And then we had these people from the School of the Art Institute of Chicago come down. They tell us about their school. It's 3 hours north, but I've never heard of it before. They're like Walt Disney, George O'Keeffe, Hugh Hefner, if you're into that. Like, there are so many alumni here. There's so many people that go to this school. It's like the Harvard of art schools. I was like, oh, I want to go here. And my same teacher, who's awesome, Mac, said, hey, you either have to have a lot of money, which we know I had zero, and my Montgomery GI Bill wouldn't pay for a private school, or you have to study art your whole life to get into the school. And I was like, you know what? There's the optimism again. I'm just going to go for it. Why not? And so that's the only school I applied for. I go up there with all my stuff. I show them it all. It's kind of crap because every other person has... there's that movie where they're talking about flair, where you have 15 pieces of flair, and that guy knows the 15 is the requirement. I had the requirement 12 pieces of art, but I'm going out there and everyone else has like 30 pieces, all modern conceptual art. About 10 of my 12 were all still lifes, like drawings of bananas and stuff. Because again, I've only had a few years in this art world, so I don't know what I'm doing. So they said, hey, you're a good draftsman, but this is lacking in what we're doing as artists. We want the next big artist. We want the next big thing. And so I had a moment, and I said, you know what? I got to sell them on this idea of what I want to do, not what I've done. And I said, hey, I have been restricted by a teacher teaching me this skill set. Yeah, I'm new to art. But here's what I want to do. I want you to know what it feels like to be blown up without being blown up. I want you to know what the loss of innocence of war looks like. And I think I could do that through art and through your school. So the lady brought in another person to kind of hear my story. I told him too, and they said, hey, let's give him a chance. So all of a sudden, I'm at the best art school in the country now from being a non-artist, and I'm going into extreme debt because, again, God put me on this path. At the same time, I was actually engaged to a girl who I was perfect for before war. I was not perfect for after war. She moved from Pennsylvania to Illinois for me. I was getting the Illinois Veteran Grant and the Montgomery GI Bill when I was going to the community college. So I was making like $60,000, $70,000 a year doing nothing. And I knew that if I made that choice of going to the art school, which is private and my GI Bill didn't pay for, I was going to go in extreme debt and break off that relationship because there's no way it could sustain. But again, I reflected on everything that God put in my path and I said, well, this is helping me. It's the thing where you put your mask on before anybody else's. I said, there's something about this. And I know I'm about to ruin everything else in my life, but I got to give this a chance. And so I just went for it. And the art school completely changed my life. I started doing art that just really expressed what I was going through, talking about my break into the art world. In the Marine Corps, it's, fire team is 4 people. Then there's 4 people in a squad, 4 squads, a platoon. It's like the 4 is like a recurring number. So I put 4 oversized G.I. Joes in this thing with 1 kicking his foot out. And this is all found. I didn't know anything about art, and I just found these pieces. I found an old painting, I found an old screen print, and I had these G.I. Joes, and I put them together in this collage class. And I have a whole nother funny story about this collage class that we'll save for later, but it was my first introduction that art could be anything. And so I started getting so many people to start talking to me about my art and opening up conversations I never thought I had before. So then I went into full art mode where I said, well, how can I start doing these things where I can start changing people's mind about war or start opening up a little bit about war? This is one of my first really conceptual pieces. I fell in love with ceramics. I was so art dumb again that when I first got to the School of Art in Chicago, I got there on my drawings and my paintings. I never knew what ceramics was. I was like, what, you're gonna go play with plates? I didn't know it started with clay. Again, super art dumb, didn't know it started with clay. My roommate at the time had me come down and play with some clay. And it was the first time I didn't think about war for like 6 hours straight because I'm sitting here just playing with clay. And I was like, I want that feeling back. That was a really good feeling. And so I just kept going back there until the moment I signed up for a clay class. And then the rest was history. That's all I did when I was at the school. So I started getting into some stuff, and I would do these things like this where I would create this little sculpture, and I'd only put a mouth, a nose, and a helmet on them. Everything else is like open to interpretation. So they're obviously little sculptures. So the way that I wanted to show loss of innocence in war to people was I brought these little sculptures down to my home. My 5 and 10-year-old niece, I was like, hey, can you paint my art pieces? And I have this video of them painting these art pieces saying, I'm going to put a peace sign on his head. I'm going to paint him pink. They were referring to this sculpture as a hymn and wanting to give it life. And I said, that's what you miss. That's what you lose when you go to war and you take someone's life, or you've been blown up, or you've seen someone die. That loss of innocence, and that translates to anybody outside of war. If you've been in a car accident, domestic violence, anything that's happened to you, what you're missing is a loss of innocence. And I was able to show it through art for them and feel connected to them. And so I go down this whole rabbit hole of just art. But hey, art can also be very fun. This is what I talk about when warrior brain to artist brain transition. I didn't ever want to stop being a warrior, but I need to stop thinking like a warrior all the time. And so I'm now working at a bar called Joe's Bar in Chicago as I'm doing my art career and not knowing what's next for me. And there's a VIP area where this guy started coming up the stairs. I was like, hey, you don't have the credentials to be up here. And it was Blake Shelton or someone was playing in the bar that night. And he's like, I fought in the military. I deserve to be up there. And something in my head just wanted to be like the Sparta thing where I was like, no, and kick him down the stairs, but I didn't. Because in my head, I was like, I don't deserve to be up here. I was blown up 4 times, lost my friend. I don't even deserve to be up here. Nobody deserves to be up here unless you're his friend and he wants you up here. But it just got me so mad thinking that all these people are taking advantage of their own service to get free things. So I came back to the art studio and it was still like on my head. And so I created this piece, which is like 4 feet tall, and I'm going to give you a little class on modern art and symbolism. So if you take a look at this, his head can't fit into his helmet. So that means he's got a really big head, big ego. He's on a pedestal, so he likes to put himself up on a pedestal. I made him bronze because he feels like, he's the king, but he also looks like a huge dick. So I called this Corporal Richards. And legitimately, I was able to get all my aggression out in this one piece. And so that's where the transition happens. There's another story related kind of to this. When I was in Chicago, my sister doesn't make the best choices, obviously, if she's been in and out of prison and jail. At the time, my nephew was 9 months old. My sister's boyfriend at the time broke in at like 3 a.m., with a knife, stabbed her in the chest. Luckily, my cousin, who's only an 18-year-old female, but she's Kentucky, Louisville born and bred, so she came out of the room and he didn't know she was in there and hit him with a golf club. He kind of went down. My sister pulled the knife out of her chest and stabbed him. This is a crazy story, but like this is how intense this got. So we hear this story, and it gets even crazier than that, but they ended up putting them both in the same, they both survived, but they put them both in the same ambulance, like going to the hospital. So you imagine me getting this call in Chicago as a combat veteran where they're like, hey, your sister just stabbed, he's still alive. The first thought in my head was warrior brain, I'm gonna go kill this guy. I'm legitimately gonna go down and kill this guy. Because he also took the 9-month-old nephew and like threw him on the ground when he went to stab her. And so, but then after all this schooling of learning how to kind of translate my stories, I start doing this mental process and I'm like, why did you do that? Why did he do that? Why did she stay with him? We knew he was bad. But why doesn't she believe in God more? Why didn't she see a sign? Maybe she asked God for a sign, showed it to her, but she didn't see it. And I'm going through this process. They say, what if I write a song called This Is Your Sign, so that maybe one day when someone's in domestic violence and they hear my song come on the radio called This Is Your Sign, it'll save them from this exact situation. And then I wrote that song in like 15 minutes and I realized I was okay and I didn't have aggression. And I just went down to Louisville and sat by my sister's side. And I was like, what just happened? Again, it was able to process my emotions in a way that saved my own life, honestly, because I would have probably had life in prison. And so these are the things that art and music truly can do for you, and that's why I'm such a big advocate for it. Most 6'5" combat Marines with a Purple Heart aren't like, hey, let's go do art together. But I truly believe that all men should be able to do art and music to express themselves and empower themselves. So I have a bunch of other pieces, but I got way into these stories. I started doing parodies of songs because I want to make sure I'm good with your guys' time. I came down to Nashville. Here's the coolest thing. These are all the God moments. When I was in Chicago and I was going to school, I'm sitting here thinking, okay, I've been writing a song about my gunner for a year and nothing has happened. It's not good enough. I keep lying in the song because I don't know how to like transition it back. It kind of sucks as a song. Then he was a beautiful human. So how do I actually put him on this pedestal he needs to be? I need a pro writer. So I take the night off because I know that there's going to be a writer's round in Chicago at this bar I'm working at. So there's 4 writers in a circle, just like down here. I didn't know that Bluebird existed at the time. And I go up, and after they all play their songs, they've all had number ones. I go to the first guy, say, hey, loved your songs. Have you ever written with or for a veteran before? No. So I go to the next one, same thing, no. Get to the third one, Mark Irwin, and I was like, hey, have you ever written with a veteran or for a veteran before? He said, yeah, actually, I wrote a song called Runway Lights about a staff sergeant coming home from war with Billy Ray Cyrus. And I said, hey, you don't know me from Adam, but if you give me an opportunity, can I come down to you in Nashville and write my song? Because I'm going through all these emotions. I'm trying to write a song about my friend who died, and I'm not putting him on a pedestal. He's like, yeah, okay. And I'm like, looking back now, that was huge. Most hit writers, even a lot, because he has 8 or 9 number ones, most hit writers can't get in a room with Mark Irwin. And here I am in Chicago just asking him to entertain me. He's like, yeah, come on down, we'll set a date. And so I come down to Nashville, and we write a song and a half. This is the first song and a half in 3 hours. I'm like, I've been trying to do this for a whole year, and you just did this in an hour and a half, and we started a new one. And it was a song called One Night in Iraq. I thought it was a song I needed, but it really wasn't. It was just something I needed to get off my chest at the time. And that was the first moment where I was like, I need to bring every veteran I know to Nashville to do this same thing. And so Jesse was the first one I brought down because I was like, okay, I've been doing art and music for 4 years now, like writing my story, doing art about my story. And from that scale of 0 to 100, with 9 being me where I was at an 85 now. After getting out of the college and telling my story, I was at an 85 and I was totally okay with that. But then I'm like, Jesse, he does not like telling the story. If you see he has a prosthetic on his leg, burns over 60% of his body, lost his leg in Iraq in a V-bed, closest friend from home that served, hates telling this story. Still to this day, you'll find him climbing those like 100-foot towers, like with his prosthetic. He's a salter guy, doesn't want to burden anybody with his story, so he doesn't talk about it. So I said, you know what? I've never helped anybody, but I feel like this would help him. I was, Jesse, do you want to go to Nashville with me? I met these other hit writers who are willing to tell your story. Honestly, I thought he was going to say no, and he was like, oh, I love music. Yeah, that'd be cool. So I do like a $280 GoFundMe and just saying, I want to bring my friend to Nashville. we stayed in the same hotel over by the airport, $40 a night. It was crazy. We wrote in some guy's backyard, pretty much in his production area. And that's the first time I saw Jesse just open up. Salty Earth, just like sitting down. You could tell he kind of didn't want to be there, but he did too at the same time. And I was like, hey, Jesse, all this stuff that we talked about before this, I was like, do you want to tell him a little bit about your song idea? So psychology, it's like, he's not telling a story, he's telling a song idea. So he starts telling a story about, I'm from a small town, so everyone knew I was injured. So when I got home, they're all, trying to pump me up. You look so good. You must feel so blessed being back home. And he said, they don't see the war when I close my eyes or when I'm 4 a.m. when I have to pee and I can't put on my prosthetic. So I'm legitimately crawling on the floor to go to the bathroom. And he's like, it's just a pain. But he's still sitting there with his head down. And then the guys from Blackjack Billy were just like, okay. This is almost instantaneous. What about something like this? Hey, boy, you looking good. We're glad you're back. Man, I heard you got hurt real bad. How does that sound for a start? Jesse's eyes just lit up. He started word vomiting things I've never heard him say before. I was like, this is so cool. So that for me was my pilot program. So I go back home. I'm like, I just saved Jesse. Like, he just told his story to his family because the first person he texts, all the people he said he can't tell a story to were the first people he's texting a story to. He's like, babe, listen to my song I just wrote. And I realized in that moment that if you can outweigh a veteran's anxiety and depression with excitement, you can get them to do anything. And there's always something they're going to be more excited about. And so for him, coming to Nashville to write with a hit writer was what got excited. So I go back up to Chicago. I have so many God stories that you'll see, like God just shows up when I need him the most. So I had no idea anything about nonprofits, didn't know how to operate, how to run them. Obviously, it's an extremely poor family, nobody in business. And so I'm back up in Chicago trying to figure out like what just happened and how do I create this? Well, I met this lady named Linda Tarson, and the way that I met her is the most insane way possible. I'm living in Chicago. I have a roommate, she's 4'11". I'm dating a girl, Bradley Cheerleader in Peoria, and I'm Skyping with her back in the day when we used to do Skype. And I'm Skyping with my girlfriend. And so when my roommate came in, she said, hey, my dad came up. He's on drill this weekend, and it's my birthday, so he's going to take me out to a steakhouse. I said, oh, cool. You have fun with that. Because in my head, I'm like, she ain't going to let me go with this girl to steakhouse. But my girlfriend at the time was like, oh, no, you can go. I was like, okay. So I shut the laptop. I go down. We go to a steakhouse in Chicago. And we're enjoying our meal. He's in his fatigue still because he had to do some training. And these two ladies walk up and they say, oh, thank you for your service. He said, don't thank me, thank Richard. He's done more than I have. So I put my head down and I was like, don't look at me. And so they said, okay, thank you. They walk out. 10 minutes later, one of them comes back in. She says, hey, because the next day was Veterans Day in Chicago. She said, hey, are you guys by chance going to the Bears game tomorrow? And we're like, no. She's like, well, I have 3 clubhouse tickets, and it's Salute to Troops, Veterans Day. I feel like I should give them to you. So I go, oh, okay, we'll take them. And so I go pick them up from her house, see that she's a very loaded lady, and I'm just like, oh my gosh, this is awesome. But then I look at the tickets, because I didn't look it up. I didn't really follow football at the time. They're playing the Houston Texans. My team, Chicago Bears, was playing Houston, Texas, where my buddy was from, who was shot and killed. And so went to that game. It rained the whole time. Houston won, of course. But I was like, how do I give this lady something? She's a millionaire, obviously, with this place. How do I give her something? I wrote a song. And in one of the lines said he put the freedom, and I used this photo, and I put it over there, and I delivered it to her. And so just every month, she wanted to know more about my life, so we'd get together. Right after I wrote with Jesse, it was one of those lunches. I said, Linda, I feel like I need to start a nonprofit. I don't know how. She's like, oh, let's just do it. I've been on boards. Well, I'll find some board members. You find some board members. Let's roll. Like, you know the program. You do it. So in 2013, we launched Creative Vets. And so we started with 9 veterans the first year served. They didn't give, even though they had a lot of money, they didn't give me all that money. Like the first year, we was like $19,000. They really made me fight for it. Served 9 veterans, bringing them to Nashville to write their story. But every time I came down to Nashville, I'd wait. I'd stay. So I've still to this day, I've never drank alcohol. I haven't tasted beer. And a lot of that is because I saw what was happening to my siblings. And I said, the one common denominator before everyone in my family who's failed is they drink or do drugs. I'm just going to, maybe if I don't do that, I'll be successful. So far, so good. Unless someone's got a beer. No, just kidding. Let's test this theory out. So fast forward, oh my gosh, that's where my brain injury kicks in. Where was I going with that? Where did I start? Where did I start that conversation? 19 grand, first year, yeah. Here was see, I like this. So 19 grand that first year, but every time I came down, I would stay out till 2 or 3 in the morning just to recruit more songwriters. A lot of times they're drunk, they forgot they gave me their number, and I'd text them the next morning and be like, you promised you'd write with this veteran. So I would just set it up as I didn't even live here. I'd have the veteran, I'd find a songwriter, say, hey, I'm bringing veterans, would you write with them? They said, yeah, give me a date. Then I'd find a veteran, I'd bring them down. From the day one though, we paid for their flight, their food, their housing, because I knew what it was like for all the friction points. Not having money would stop me from going. Not having a battle buddy would stop me from going. So every single veteran, I called them personally. I was blown up 4 times, lost my friend, what'd you go through? They'd tell me. I said, well, what's the one thing you can't tell your friends or family? They'd tell me. I said, well, we're gonna write about that, but we're gonna do it with this #1 songwriter. And they get so buzzed about #1 songwriter in Nashville that they just come down, we tell their story, life-changing. Fast forward, now that was 2013 when we started, I moved here in 2015. By 2020, we got a record deal with Big Machine Records to release our music with over 20 million streams of our music. We scaled where we served 1,200 veterans in 17 states last year alone. We built a prescription music platform to prescribe music to veterans based off the songs that we wrote. So we were just running and gunning. Last year was our best year yet where we raised $2 million, served the 1,200 veterans in all these places. This is the coolest story ever. So this is when I first was talking to Rick, and he told me this is like men's group, tough stories, God, where God intersects. There is nothing that showed its face more from God's, like it coming into my life than me trying to get this church. So 2018, I moved into Charlotte Park. And so this church was abandoned since 2017. I didn't know at the time. In 2018, we had like maybe $300,000 as a nonprofit. I would drive by that place and I just kept saying, that's going to be Creative Vets. That's going to be our 24-hour art and music center for veterans. Like, because you never know when PTSD is going to hit. And sometimes at 2 a.m., if you get in a fight or you're doing something, you want a place to be creative and not destructive. And there's nothing like this that exists. So 2018 goes by, I see it, I'm like, that's supposed to be ours. 2019 goes by, I keep looking at it. I was like, I know I don't have money for that, but I feel like that's going to be ours. 2020 comes, we get the other space, so I forget about it for 2 years. 2022, I said, you know what? I'm going to actually try to find out who owns this. So I find out that a group called Patel Brothers own it, and I try to reach out, can't get a hold of them. Another year goes by, and I just reach out to the council member. Again, throughout this whole process, I didn't have the money for this at all. I just kept saying, I'm just going to look into it. And finally get a hold of the council member. He tells me the whole story, says, I don't think it's ever going to be for sale. They're trying to demolish it, put a hotel here. They're waiting to get clearance, all this stuff. Community doesn't want them here. So I'll let you know if anything happens. I'll email the Patel Brothers for you. Still nothing. So then last board meeting, it was in August of last year. I tell the board, best year ever, 2 million served, 1,200 veterans, 19 states, but we're renting from this space on 12th. We need to own something in Nashville. There's this church I've been wanting to get, but I don't think it'll ever be for sale. So I'm just letting you guys know I'm going to search for a space for us to live now. They said, oh, awesome. That was a Saturday. Tuesday, I drive by the church for sale sign. I instantly whip around. My son, who's 5, is like, what are we doing? I'm like, Tokyo drifting. And I get the photo of like the number on there. I go back home. I call the guy. I said, hey, man, I don't think I have the money for this, which is probably what you don't want to hear, but can you tell me about this church? Listed at $4 million. He's like, it's Patel Brothers. They need to be liquid, so they're trying to sell this. They're looking for a donor. He said, but here's the issue. It's actually under contract right now. I just had an extra sign randomly today, so I threw it up. But the issue is nobody can get change the zoning, and that's why, that it's still available. So I said, okay, well, let me know if it comes off the market. And he said, I love what you're doing so much. I have so many people that called about this already, but I'm going to call you first if it does. So Friday rolls around, it's like 3 p.m., and I get a text from inside the church. It's available. I'm sitting here thinking, oh my gosh, since 2018 I've wanted this, and now I'm actually in the driver's seat. This is very scary because I do not have the money for this. But you know what, screw it. Let me see the place. Because again, I've never seen inside. It's 19,000 square feet on 2.5 acres, right on 40 and Briley. Like, it's a gem of a spot. And I said, well, let's look at the inside since it's been sitting since 2017. This is where, again, my story gets kind of crazy from not knowing anybody to Nashville to now. I know it's already been crazy. The Saturday, I told him, I said, hey, can we meet in the morning? He said, no, let's do 4 p.m. So I'm going to Vince Gill and Amy Grant's house to get my chiropractor treatment on, as one does. That's where the story gets crazy. I'll tell that story later, but I'm trying to figure this out. I legitimately get adjusted in Vince Gill's living room. So I show up to Vince's house. It's like 1:45. Go in, sit down. Rusty Cross is the chiropractor. I say hey to him. Instantly get a text saying, hey, actually, can you meet me at 2:10? I'm like, oh crap, that's 15 minutes? Okay, yeah, I can meet you there. And so I start walking out the door jams. First time it's ever jammed on me. So Vince comes around and he's like, hey, you gotta really push it down, but where are you going? You didn't even get adjusted. Man, there's this church over there in Charlotte. Oh, I know that church, my daughter lives over there. I haven't seen Amy at this point yet, but Amy Grant comes around the corner. She's like, Vince, I need a guitar. As if, obviously Vince has a guitar laying around somewhere. I need a guitar, I'm playing this event tonight. And she's like, Richard, what are you doing? Same thing I tell her, I'm like, here's my issue. We only raised $2 million all of last year, and that really pushed the limits on what we're doing. I need at least $2.5 million to commit to this. I need to put $2.5 million down. There's no way we can finance this. I just need that. And she's like, well, there's a reason you're here today. We're going to help you put that under contract, and we're going to help you get this. So again, when Amy Grant tells you that, you felt like God just spoke to you personally, and you're like, yes, I'm going to get this. I was kind of like overly cocky a little bit too, like, yes, we're going to get this. Month goes by. We only have it on a 2-month contract. Again, I'm texting people, all the people I know, the high wealth, hey, help us change the world with this new place that has never existed, and Amy Grant, Vince Gill's involved. Nothing, crickets. To the point to where Amy and Vince had me speak in their living room to like 8 people, almost like this, but just to 8 people, and I raised about $250,000, but it was a week before I had to say no to the church because we didn't raise enough money. I was like, there's no way I'm bankrupting Creative Vets or losing my buddy's life on a church building. Although I think God is putting me in this path, maybe he put me in this path to stall this for someone else to get. I always, again, try to be as optimistic as possible. Maybe it's for someone else. My plan was just to hold it. But I tell Amy, I'm still going for this church. I'm still going to go after this. So I still keep taking meetings, talking to people. Obviously, if you have money, you're not just going to give money to a random dude who doesn't even have a building under, it's not even his yet. He just put it under contract. So for the most part, I was getting a lot of pushback. January rolls around. I get a call from the realtor. They say, hey, we're going to tear this church down. And I'm like, that can't be. There's no way that you're going to tear this church down. They're like, well, the developers, they can't find anybody to buy it. They'll give you one more shot if you want to try to get this. So I was like, okay. So we ended up getting them down to like 3.3 million, which was the contract, and 3 more months. And I'm like, I can't. I've tried for so long. I don't think I can get this. I've kind of tapped out of my resources. Going strong because I felt like God was putting me there again, either to stall this place out for someone else to get or to get it ourselves. And so we start going after it again. A day before the contract's about to be up, so 3 months, my realtor says, you can actually extend 1 more month, but the $50,000 you put down is going to go to them if you don't get this. And everything in my right mind is going, well, that's like 3 art programs in Nashville with 30 veterans flying to town. Like, I'm really stinging on how I spend money. My whole team is programs. I have a part-time grant writer and me, no other fundraising mechanism. We're at $2 million. That's how I throw all my money at programs. But there was something inside of me that said, just go for it. But in my head too was like, hey, you've tried this for 6 months with Amy, Vince, all these people. You still need to clear at least $2 million now in a month. You know what? Let's go for it. So I go for it. A week later, I have a sit-down meeting with Gary Sinise. Before I showed him the space, I never met him before that first time I showed him the space 2 months prior to that. And we have this hour-long conversation with the CEO of the foundation in there. And then he's like, can you guys leave me and Richard? And they left. And he said, hey, Mac, my son, his son died of a very rare cancer in his 30s. Only 300 people in the world get. And his last part of his life, he just scored music. He went to USC for music and he was getting back into it. He scored this beautiful album. He told me this whole life about how Mac just wanted to continue serving. And so he said, I'm going to give you $1 million for the auditorium so you can name it after my son. And I'm sitting here, okay, we have 1.5 and Gary Sinise, that's it. We don't need any more than that. But then a week later, I have a meeting with 2 other people who want to remain. And I just want you to know, before this, Creative Vets has never received a donation higher than $150,000. That's probably, again, the lack of fundraisers stuff. It's just me going out there. So all of a sudden, we get this $1 million from Gary. And a week later, I meet with these 2 other individuals. And I've already showed them the place in October. I told them all the stuff I'm doing. They kept pushing back on everything I did. And then they came. I just went in there more confident than ever. I said, Gary's in. You're in or you're out. We're going for this place, all this stuff. And they said, hey, we'll let you know. This is Memorial Day. So this is just this last Memorial Day. Friday, I meet with them too. They said, hey, we'll let you know. So Sunday rolls around. Then Monday, I'm like, oh, this is going to be like a Memorial Day gift. Hey, we'll give you this money on Memorial Day. So then Tuesday rolls around. I haven't heard from them. I'm like, hey, guys, I know you said you're going to donate, but I need to legitimately know because I need a bridge loan or something. I can't still secure this. I need the money. I need to know how much you're giving if you're going to give. He's like, oh, we'll let you know by the end of the day. End of the day rolls around, nothing. Wednesday morning, I'm like, hey, guys, not to be a stickler, but I know you said you're giving, but how much is it going to be? He's like, oh, okay, we'll let you know later. Then 1 p.m. rolls around. I do it again, nothing. I go to get my hair cut. I still remember I get this email at 4 p.m. They came in together and donated $1 million each. We just got 3 $1 million donors that we've never had before, all delivered at once. And then we still needed to get a bridge loan in 2 weeks. We got it cleared in a week, which is almost impossible. We had 3 banks all say they'd give us a line of credit or a bridge loan within a week. And then when my board member says, Richard, does anybody ever say no to you? I was like, well, my wife says no so many times that it makes other people say yes. And so we ended up securing this church. And it's just like, but God showed up even more than that. Let's see how much time I have. Again, we're a little over. But throughout this process, Amy has been, she's been the thing that held this all together. Every time I said, hey, Milton Johnson's one of the guys. I never met him a day in my life. A guy who used to be CEO of HCA. I had someone talk him into meeting me at the church. We walked through it. He said, you know, I'm gonna donate $250,000, 125 this year, 125,000 next year. But Amy came on every one of those. One of those times when I gave my little speech in her living room, here's the kicker too. When I gave that speech, this is 2 months after we put her under contract the first time, she said, oh, Richard, I don't think I ever told you this, but a week before you showed up to our house, I actually verbally prayed at that church and said, whatever comes here, I want to be a part of. I'm like, that was some good information that I should have known about. And so it was just life-changing to have her on board. So I spoke at her thing. Brittany Schaefer from Belmont was there. She said, hey, we have a architect I'd love you to meet named Dave Minigan. I never met him. I went to Belmont, tried to meet with him, never could happen. She invited me to this faith day. I showed up randomly. There's 50 tables out there. She said, hey, just go mingle with people. They're all faith-based. They do fundraisers and stuff, but just find a table. So I go, I see there's labels on every single table that have something to do with, psychology, fitness, arts, all these things. So I go up to the table, say, I'm not registered for anything here, but can you put me on any table that has art in it? They're like, okay, go to table 21. I go there, tell a little bit of my story, and Dave's next to me. He's like, oh, hey, I think we're supposed to meet each other. And it was the architect. 2 months, when we went on the contract the second time, when we came back around, because he couldn't do it back then, I toured it with him because he never saw it. I was like, hey, can you come by? The Tuesday he toured it, he said, Richard, by the way, I put in my retirement papers this morning. I'm going to be your architect. And I'm like, oh my gosh. And throughout that process, he told me about a guy who runs an electrical company that he met Amy during the time and she's friends with him. So I text Amy, do you know this guy? Yes. He tours the place by that Friday. I say, hey, our biggest issue on securing this place is it's going to be almost $1 million for electrical. They tore out all the electrical, 1,000 square feet, 34 rooms. We've got a quote for $500 to $1 million, what this is going to look like. He said, well, probably around $750, but we're just going to cover it for you. I'm just like, God just kept delivering, because I was so I feel like he's telling me this, so we went for it. So I had to tell you that story, and sorry I went long. So lastly, I always end on this just saying, one-on-one speech is my speech teacher. To CMAs, to speaking at the Bush Institute, it was Bill and Melinda Gates, it was the President Bush, it was the CEO of Boeing apologizing for his planes for 10 minutes, and then he invited me up to speak. It was Dr. Henry Kissinger that night, and then me, speaking and singing a song, sitting here thinking, a few years ago, I had to do one-on-one speech with my speech teacher. Now I'm singing for a president and the CEO of Uber and the CEO of Boeing, and Dr. Henry Kissinger's in back. What is my life? And it was art and music education. Wasn't art therapy, wasn't music therapy, wasn't another nonprofit. It was learning how to tell my story without telling my story and being vulnerable and repurposing my memories and remapping my brain. So if the one takeaway is give art a chance and give music a chance and be vulnerable, it's the one tool where you empower yourself to tell your story and you don't have to worry unless you want someone to know your story. You can hide your whole story in an art piece. You can hide symbolism in a song, but you get to choose when you get to tell people what that story is. So I want to thank you all so much for having me. Sorry I went a little long. I have a lot of different stories too. Wish I could have told more. I'll be around for a little bit though. Thank you. I said, sorry.